So we've had 3 losses of students due to these horrific accidents, and the community has been so impacted. We've had to provide grief counseling over all 3 occasions. It really was shocking to everyone. I mean, as if the first student, when Sammy died, it was just so devastating to everyone. There was so much crying and so many days of pulling the staff and students together and counseling them. And then, of course, with Joey and then Muhammad, sort of just stirring up all those feelings and emotions.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce Allison. Allison is your self-appointed chair of the Vision Zero Youth Council. She went here to MS 51 and now is a student at Brooklyn Tech. And she's going to lead us through everything and talk about how you guys can make a real difference on the streets.
So the Youth Council is a group organized for NYC students, grades 4 through 12, to raise awareness about preventing car accidents and being street safe. Get the word out, get more people involved, get more of my friends, more of my classmates, my teachers, everybody, to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
When Joey passed away for me, that was the, oh, mark. It was the kind of, this is a big issue.
I'm here to prevent accidents.
The reason I'm here is because I think that it's really horrible that 3 people has been killed.
Hello, my name is Marcia Landis, and my daughter, Joey Tyler Sellers, was the second child who passed away by a car. And I just want the world to know that street safety is important.
A lot of cars don't wait for you when you're trying to get across.
I was walking to the subway and there was this one kid that crossed the street and almost got hit. And the guy was driving right next to the school, and I was like, really? Are you kidding me? Like, you see, there are a bunch of kids, like, slow down.
A couple of children that were mentioned were, hurt, and they didn't do anything wrong. They were just walking on a sidewalk, going home. They had the right of way. They did all the things they were supposed to do.
We've had a lot of collaborations with Department of Transportation, Transportation Alternatives, and all of their educational sections coming into the school and doing classes for kids. In all of the accidents that happened that involved our students, the students were not at fault, but we still felt it would be sort of comforting for students to have more education on pedestrian safety.
Make a quick list of things that you think that you would like to ask for that would be useful.
Around a lot of schools, there's one crossing guard, which is just at the one street that's near the main entrance, which is not always the school, that's not always the entrance that everyone in the school uses.
On some streets, there is a sound on the lamppost, and that a man is saying walk or stop.
Some places we have numbers counting down of how much time we have to cross, which really helps.
Is installing more of the traffic cameras that are monitoring speed.
The sidewalk should be bigger, and that way the cars would have to slow down when they would turn.
There should be a longer time crossing the streets.
You can ask for leading pedestrian intervals. So what that means is instead of getting the green light and the man at the same time, the light stays red and you get the man, and you can use the white walking signal to go about 6 or 7 seconds in, and then the light changes to green for drivers.
Our first Vision Zero Youth Council meeting was amazing. I'm so proud of Allison and all the students. I really feel there's some comfort in taking action. I think our teachers agree. We all feel like we want to do something to help. So I'm so proud of the students who showed up today. We didn't have a lot of advertising, but we had a great group of kids. They all came to really think and work and present their ideas on how they want to help make the streets safer for all our students.
Powerful video. Following the sudden and tragic loss of 3 children in just over a year, students at Middle School 51 in Park Slope have been searching for solace and ways to channel their collective grief. They have tried to find comfort in becoming advocates for change, hoping they can help reduce the number of traffic fatalities here in Brooklyn. And as we just saw when their school hosted the first meeting of the Vision Zero Youth Council, the young lobbyists for safer streets range from high school-age children down to the elementary level.
That's right. The schools are working with local elected officials, and we're delighted to welcome City Councilman Brad Lander. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
As well as Marjorie Marciano, Deputy Director for Safety Education with NYC Department of Transportation. Welcome to the show. And we're also happy to have with us Senior Director of Campaigns and Organizing, Caroline Sampanaro. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So first question, this is a very, it's been just a challenging year. And how have these deaths affected your work on the City Council?
Well, it has been a very powerful year with the sorrows of these losses, but it absolutely is true that somehow with the family members together with other advocates, finding the courage to turn that grief into advocacy, we've also made some big changes. So with the support of Transportation Alternatives and the DOT, and led by those family members from Families for Safe Streets, we reduced the speed limit, passed a whole new set of Vision Zero policies. We really are making progress. It was the lowest year of pedestrian fatalities in really the records in history, since we've been keeping records. Now every one is too much, and each one is so painful. You know, it's just now, it's not even 6 weeks since we lost Mohammed Naeemuddin, the third of the former MS-51 students. He was a Brooklyn Tech student at the time, and each time a whole community is grieving, a family is really devastated. But I'll say, in addition to this beautiful youth council that we'll talk about, and Allison reached out to me. I had met her actually because she was a friend of Sammy's, who I knew. That family goes to my synagogue. So I met her then, and then she reached out after Naeem was killed to say, we just have to do something. Right. And so she organized that incredible meeting. And in the same way, Naeem's family, a Bangladeshi immigrant family, was at a meeting last week in Kensington with a couple of hundred people pushing for safe streets in their neighborhood. So you have this just horrible pain that you really can't imagine what it is like to lose a kid or a family member, and yet to see people joining with others and turning that into advocacy to make the streets safer so we don't have more deaths. It's been very, very powerful, and I have to say, it really is thanks to the advocacy organizations and in partnership with DOT and the city. It doesn't dull the pain, right, but it at least points the way forward to make those lives really, a moving memorial to a safer city.
Okay. Coming across the table, Marjorie, what are some of the ways that we actually can make the streets safer in areas where children sort of frequent parks?
Okay, well, our programs at DOT from the Safety Education Office. So we've developed programs, especially for middle school students, where we really are trying to get them to think about traffic situations that they can find themselves in. Crossing with the signal and having to deal with turning cars, what to do if you're crossing mid-block, talking to them about, being distracted when they're walking, and also, how they can be safe when there are drivers who are distracted. So we go into classrooms, and at MS-51, we're really going to speak with all of the students in the school, and we go into classrooms with our programs, and we really want kids to start thinking about these situations and thinking about ways that they can be safe. So help them with decision-making and how to come up with a safe decision, and then really how to share that information with other students, with their families, with older brothers and sisters or younger brothers and sisters. And so it's to get them really understanding what's happening outside and then thinking about how to make good, healthy, safe decisions.
Right. What's the reaction of the students?
Well, the students in that school are pretty wonderful.
Very vocal.
Very vocal.
Yes.
They have wonderful ideas. We go into the classrooms with different scenarios, and sometimes they get so involved in talking about one of them that it's hard for us to go through all of our scenarios. And so in general, though, across the city, when we work with this age student, they're very interested in it. I mean, they don't always say, they know that people are distracted when they're walking, and that they don't, necessarily see themselves as being distracted when they're walking, but we want to talk to them about that. But our programs are built to be really interactive and to get kids thinking and and sharing information.
I have to say, when I was, a youth so many years ago,
Yes.
I would walk around with my Walkman on, with a cassette deck or things. But now, when people are able to engage in social media and so many different things from their phones, it's really hard to get people to always sort of tune in. So coming around to the Vision Zero Youth Council, what are some of the objectives and attainable goals?
I mean, I think that, I should start by saying that Allison is really the leader of the Youth Council. As an adult, I'm her partner as an advocate, but it's been really inspiring to watch how a community has rallied around Naeem, Joey, and Sammy's deaths. Allison is really, is leading that. But I do think that, one thing that's true about Vision Zero is that it places the burden of safety in systems. So it's not the individual that is responsible to make sure that they're not going to die. It's really great street design. It's an education system that proactively teaches young people how to be street safety leaders. It's laws that protect the most vulnerable people. It's really putting the burden into the systems we have at play in New York City to make sure that we're preventing death from the very core of how we go about what we do. So I think this youth council is really pointing forward. It's pointing to a city street that thinks of pedestrians first. The youth council is pointing to a community that, values public space as a place to gather and for students to go on lunch over the speed of vehicle traffic. And I think this youth council is really going to uncover a lot of creative ideas. I mean, even this first meeting, I was wowed to hear all of the visions they had for streets that I hadn't even thought of. So
here in New York, it's hard to even get people, the city, to come and fix a pothole. I mean, they're going to come up with amazing ideas, I'm sure, and really creative. But how plausible is it that these things will actually be implemented? What do you think some of the challenges are that you're going to face?
I mean, I think, a city like New York always has resource challenges, but I think Vision Zero as a policy priority for our city really does, it prioritizes resources to go to the most basic safety improvements. So, first off the top of my head, thing that comes to mind is making sure, like you said, that crossing the street to get to a school is the safest place that you can cross in New York City, right? Making sure we're using all of the technology we can to enforce the law. So if that's speed cameras, like the students pointed out in their video, or if it's, great leadership classes that happen from a young age in New York City through the DOT leadership. I think, I think what we have ahead is challenges, but I think a lot of opportunity with youth leadership on the table. Right?
Okay. Are the schools sort of really open to having this programming, or, the thought occurs that, this education could also happen within the school. So what kind of feedback are you getting from the schools? Or does this program happen during regular school hours? Is it an after-school program?
Well, I want to actually start outside the schools with the parents and the streets around the school, because there's not a school in my district where the parents, the principal, the teachers, and the kids, to the extent they're old enough, don't want, if they haven't already gotten them, changes to make it safer to get to and from the school. And you already see DOT, look, we've lowered the speed limit now in the whole city to 25, but around most schools you can put a speed zone in place to make it 20. You can put in place higher visibility crossings. We just had this meeting last Thursday where DOT was out talking about 3 schools in that neighborhood that it's going to make changes to make it safer to be able to cross the street to get to and from those schools on your walk there. There's a whole Safe Routes to Schools program that DOT has built on. And you heard one of those students advocate so eloquently for more school crossing guards. And it's not only more we need to make that into a real job. I don't know if you know, we don't even pay the crossing guards for the middle hours of the day.
I thought it was a paid position.
I mean, it is paid. They're not volunteers, but they're paid for the hour or two in the morning and the hour or two in the afternoon. It's not a job with benefits. And so that's a critical safety. Those are, NYPD's safety officers. Let's at least, money. Let's at least make it a basically decent job and then have enough of them around the schools. So that's outside the schools. Inside the schools, I will say, I have seen young people and their parents and their teachers and their principals hungry for the education as well, because while our first job is to deliver them a place where it's safe to be able to get to and from the school, yes, of course, we also want them to be smart pedestrians and not be distracted by their smartphones so much that they're not paying attention to the world around them. And on the one hand, everybody knows that. On the other hand, I have definitely seen young people really glad about getting this education.
I know that Allison has spoken to me, and I'm not the expert on the after-school piece, that she's going to start to do this as her community service work through school. So I think that's an amazing opportunity for young people really to apply their passion and their interest in being leaders to this cause, which I think affects all of us daily.
Well, the most amazing, sorry to cut you off, the most amazing thing about Allison is that I read is she was friends of one of the students who was killed, and after the death, she went and purchased 40 teddy bears and put them along, was it Prospect Park West, on the lamp posts and everything. So, we have to educate the students, but this also is a way to sort of educate the drivers. Like, we have to reiterate to drivers, when you are in a school zone, it is imperative, mandatory, it is the law to sort of slow down. So, how do you also get the message out to the average New Yorker that says, hey, look, I don't care if you have kids or you don't, slow down, these are our future.
Right, because the drivers are just as distracted, and now the speed limit is 25 miles per hour, but I still see people going 40.
Absolutely.
And especially in school zones. A lot of times it's like a straightaway for some reason, and they just zoom.
And let's just call it what it is. I mean, of course, we want the pedestrians not to be distracted, but it's distracted or reckless drivers that are the ones that kill pedestrians in those crashes. And we were actually, there's some education efforts which maybe Marjorie can talk about, but I just want to say yesterday, we were, Carolyn and I were with Allison at a very moving event, about 150 people on the steps of City Hall. The first anniversary of this group, Families for Safe Streets, the family members of folks that have been killed or seriously injured in traffic crashes, to call for more accountability for reckless driving. Too often right now, when somebody does speed or run a red light or fail to yield and hit and kill or seriously injure someone, almost nothing happens. It's typical that there's no charges filed, or that if they are filed, they're dropped or reduced. People have their licenses back very quickly, and there's just no accountability or consequences. So Transportation Alternatives, Families for Safe Streets, and some elected officials are calling on our 5 district attorneys. And I'm very pleased to report that in Brooklyn here, our district attorney, Ken Thompson, has already agreed to work together in partnership with us and the families and Transportation Alternatives on a real accountability campaign, because it's only when there's accountability. It's good to do education. It's essential to do education, let people know, make people aware. But there also has to be accountability if you really want to see changes in behavior.
Absolutely. He's going to be in the House tomorrow.
Very good.
So Marjorie, in terms of the DOT, are there any initiatives in place right now to re-educate drivers about safety?
We do have public information campaigns. We've had, when the 25-mile speed limit came out, we did a big campaign around that, and now there's one that highlights, or I don't know if highlights is the right word, but that shows many of the families who lost a loved one and talking about that. And we speak to parents a lot, and many parents are drivers, so we try to get the word out about the drivers and do as much as we can, and also through our Vision Zero efforts with PD. Those are aimed at drivers. So it's to yield to pedestrians, to be sure they stop when it's a light, to not drive distracted, not drive drunk. So, there's a lot of public information campaigns going on that are aimed at drivers, that are through DOT.
The billboard and bus stop and subway ad campaign you currently have going is a very powerful one. I assume most people have seen it around a city, looking at a pedestrian who's been killed or seriously injured. He wasn't in a hurry, but the driver was. I know my family has seen them and talked about them, and it makes a big difference.
Okay. Now, transportation alternatives. I love it because in New York, you're always looking for different ways to move around the city. And as more people, move to alternate ways, to do their morning commute, it's imperative that we have the infrastructure in place to make this safe. So what things can we see on the horizon for Brooklyn that will only bring us closer to this vision of Vision Zero?
That's a great question. I mean, I think one of the things that Transportation Alternatives does is we support Brooklyn residents that are sort of fighting for safer streets in their neighborhood. Atlantic Avenue is a great example of a street that's an arterial street. It's a big, wide street. It affects many people, and yet it's one of the most dangerous places to travel right now. And so what we are working on in supporting these folks that are organizing in their neighborhoods is really reimagining what an arterial street is in Vision Zero era, right? So if we want to get to zero serious injuries and deaths we have to look at our biggest, widest streets because they're where the majority of crashes are happening and deaths are happening. And so in the coming year, I think what we're going to see is a groundswell of not just Brooklyn residents across the 5 boroughs that are really calling for arterial streets to change. Because I think if we're going to get to Vision Zero, we have to start there. Right. And you know, for folks that are getting to school, I mean, a school zone in New York City is really the entire city, right? I mean, there are schools everywhere. So you know,
that's a good point.
I work block.
Yeah, and I work really closely with Amy Cohen and Gary Eckstein to have founded Families for Safe Streets. And you know, the reality is Sammy was going from school to soccer practice, right? I mean, he wasn't technically right outside the school, but he was in the sphere of being at school. And if we're going to have a city where kids are safe and where kids can really do what they do in New York, which is walk to where they're going safely, we need to think about those big, wide streets first.
Right. Yeah. So if people are watching today and they want to get involved, how can they do that?
A lot of ways to do it. Certainly, Transportation Alternatives
Yes.
is a membership organization that people can join.
Thanks, Brad.
If they're young people, especially if they're young people in District 15 or nearby in Brooklyn, the Vision Zero Youth Council's now on Facebook and Twitter.
All right.
And
those are future voters right there that you're organizing.
It's
which
true.
is very, very
that's young
important.
people that see the need to make
And
these
city council
changes.
people,
And of course, if you're in my district, please reach out to our office. We'd love to
Okay.
be involved. But it really is an area where you've seen people make change in a very recent time. It's just not that long ago that we accepted the idea of pedestrians dying as just accidents we really couldn't do that much about. And it is because of the advocacy and passion of New Yorkers, like the young people in the video, but also and the Families for Safe Streets, and then just people who want to live in a safe but vibrant and livable city who have made those changes.
All right.
And can I add quickly? On Sunday, we kicked off a new coalition called Vision Zero Now.
Okay.
And you can sign up at transalt.org/Vision Zero Now.
All right.
Great.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.